It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach is a faith-based organization which is designed to provide information and support while encouraging hope and faith. You can find out more about us by logging onto our website at www.igbattmho.org. Just a couple of announcements. Mental Health First Aid is still going on. That's an 8-hour class where participants learn more about the various types of mentors and ways to depend on from 6:30 to 7 p.m. online. Listen to us today. Depending on Listening Awareness Month, and we talked about suicide is one that's more common than we may think. Whether you're rich by suicide, and this as a group.
Reached is if they realize that their situation is a chance that you can get
The fact here, most suicide crises are time limited and based on unclear thinking. Persons attempting suicide are generally looking for a solution or an escape. They generally do not see any other solutions. And you can think about ourselves like that something has happened, or we've got some news or some information and we thought a certain way and we felt really bad about what we thought, oh, this is over, I'm depressed, I'm down, and then as soon as we got more information, our minds change. So this is what can happen with a person who is suicidal. When you think about when a person is feeling this way, many times it's connected to a mood disorder, it's connected to a mental illness. So once you can, like you said, the symptoms get better, the person's thought process can get better. I think about it in the Bible, think about the prophet who said, oh, I am left, and I'm no better than my father, Elijah. Elijah was feeling suicidal, like just do away with me, God. But once he got the rest, and once he was able to eat, and once God began to commune with him, and he got his strength back, he had a change of thought. So when you talk about, how can I help somebody with that suicidal or thinking about suicide, one of the best ways you can help is by getting accurate information. And again, log on to our website at igbattmho.org, and we have various links that you can take a look at. But it's so important that we get not be afraid, that we're there, that, sometimes you may not know everything to say, or you may think that you don't know the right thing to say, but sometimes just being there and letting the person know that someone cares makes a difference.
That's right.
Okay. Second myth, and these are all myths. Okay. If you ask a person about encourage the person to kill themselves, and that's a myth. That's definitely a myth. The opposite is true. Asking someone directly about their suicidal feelings will often lower their anxiety level and act as a deterrent. Your openness and concern in asking about suicide will allow the person experiencing pain to talk about the problems. Okay? So, if you think someone is suicidal, don't be afraid just to ask. Evangelist Keller, you think about killing yourself. It's not going to put that thought in her mind. Like I said, the research shows and feel like, wow, it's accepted. But when you ask, don't ask like you're afraid.
And you can't act judgmentally. I thought about algae. Okay. You have to show, as you said, when a person knows that you genuinely care, and most times that's what it is. Part of what the issue is in the first place. Feeling like no one cares, no one understands. There's, so that you're taking that time with them in itself has begin to change the whole situation.
Right. Because you don't want to add, like I was going to ask you, and I say, Evangelist, you're not trying to kill yourself, are you? I don't want you to say yes or no. If I'm asking the question, like I really don't want to know the answer, then I'm not going to get a good answer. Okay.
If that person's in the crisis mode, they may not know what they intend to do.
Right.
And so he's asking, but the question should be that what's the plan? Are they a plan for you to do something, or is it just a plan to escape? And sometimes in escaping pain, people inadvertently kill themselves. They don't intend. They're crying out for help. They're in pain. And so I think we would have to talk them through the crisis point, as in Elijah, to get to the point where they have some rest, they have some sleep, and get past that crisis.
Right. And what you make a good point. It's like after you ask the person, and if the person says yes, what you're saying is, you followed up with a plan. Just like exactly. Because if a person says yes, we need to follow up and find out to determine what's going on. Just
But
like you said.
and I'm saying that, what is their plan?
Right.
Am I planning to take some pills, or
Mhm.
I'm planning to take a knife or a gun, or
Mhm.
whatever, you know?
Right.
And sometimes you can, from that, you can figure out how desperate they
Mhm.
feel, you know?
Mhm.
And even though you may have encounter a situation where the person has already taken the pills, you know, and this one I'm speaking from experience,
Right, right.
okay, where the person actually, you know, went in and they had taken them,
Mhm.
and right away I let them know. I said, well, at this point I need to get you some help, you
Mhm.
know, and basically they were crying out for help, and they quote unquote, I just can't take it anymore.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, it's not a thing of because they've already done it, well, you're already into it anyway, so what? No,
Mhm.
you know, that's where again the other plan, not plan of the person that's doing it, but our plan needs to fall into
Mhm.
place to be able to help that individual.
So
Because
yeah,
they're no
yeah.
longer
So
able
now-
to make
Mhm.
correct decisions, so you
Mhm.
have to do that.
Yeah, because they're out helping other people,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
that have been in devastating and abusive situations, you know.
Mhm.
So,
So
as you said,
mhm.
it's a cry for help.
Right, and the bottom line is what both of you are saying is that you have to, in order to get to that point, you as an individual, you have to be willing to help. You have to be
Yes.
willing to ask the question.
Mhm.
You have to be willing to step out there. And you may not know all the answers,
Mhm.
but you can at least know enough that this person, to ask the question, to follow it up, and to
Mhm.
get the person help.
Mhm.
Even if you don't know what to do, you can always call 911 if all else
That's
fails.
right. That's
You know,
right.
it may or may not be the best ideal thing to do,
Mhm.
but it's about getting the person help at that moment.
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about another myth that some people think, and we know this is a myth just from us talking, a person who attempts suicide would always be suicidal. That's not the case.
No.
You know, that doesn't always have to be the case. People who talk about suicide don't actually attempt suicide, and that's again, the research shows that 8 out of 10 people who kill themselves give warning signs. So if a person is talking about suicide or making threats, you want to take it seriously. We want to follow up, just like what you were saying, find out what's going on. Do they have a plan? How lethal it is? People who contemplate suicide are fully intent on dying, and a lot of times people are undecided. You know, so the thing is, in order to help a person, you have to get rid of the myths, some of the ideas that we have. So another myth that people think that people with suicidal thoughts are loners, and that's not true. Another myth, people think that if a person really wants to kill themselves, no one has a right to stop them. Okay. People also think that improvement following a suicidal crisis means that the risk of suicide is over. And in fact, research shows that's one of the highest time that we have to be careful of. So when we talk about suicide, we have to get rid of the myths, number one, and we have to get rid of our own not preconceived notions, but our own fears or apprehension. You know, no, you may not be able to go as far as someone else goes, or you may feel ill-equipped. Which is one reason why I just put in a plug for the mental health first aid training, which is really great because it teaches a lot of these things. But even if you've never had a class, you know, just being compassionate, okay, stepping out there. Again, a lot of times people don't want to get involved because they say, well, I don't know what to do. You know, and it's not about, you know, you may not know what to do, but do what you can do. Because if you do what you can do, if I can at least make the phone call to the police, you have police that come, that police officer may be trained to do much better than I can do. And then once that person gets to the hospital, you have staff there that can take over. You know, so you know, or a friend, or you know, whatever. But the thing is, you have to step out there and not be afraid. One of the things there is this, putting a plug for this film. It's called The Bridge, and it's about the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And this bridge evidently is one of the most famous places for people wanting to commit suicide. And it's a film. And one of the things when you look at the film, there's so many people come here on a daily basis just to jump over the bridge. But there's one guy who's a survivor, one of the few people who actually survived the bridge. And one of the things he jumped, he changed his mind. Personally, thank God that he was rescued, and he now goes around talking about this. But he talked about the people that he passed on the way. You know, how he was crying on the bus, just crying, and people just looked at him. You know, he was at the bridge getting ready to jump, and one couple asked him to take a picture. You know, but just kind of thing. So, you know, it's important that we're sensitive to kind of what's going on to one another. I think right now people are so busy. We're so busy with kids that go back to school, busy with the husband, busy with the wife, busy with church, just busy, busy, busy. We don't take an opportunity just to sit back and observe what's going on with our neighbor, with our friend, with our cousin. You know, just making a phone call to someone. You know, hey, I just want to see if you're okay. You know, doesn't have to be a long conversation. You're okay, fine. You know, so when you talk about suicide prevention, you have to kind of get involved to some degree. It doesn't have to be a full degree, but it can be to some degree. Okay. Now we're going to talk about some warning signs. Any comments before we go into warning signs, ladies? Okay. Let's talk about, and these are just warning signs. It doesn't mean that because a person has any of these that they're going to kill themselves. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. But you know, before I do that, let me talk about getting into some of these stats here. This was in 2005, so it's a little old. Suicide is the 11th most common cause of death. Okay, it is the second leading cause of death among 25 to 35-year-olds, and the leading cause of death among 15 to 24-year-olds. So when you think about, you know, what would you think would make a young person with everything to live for
They don't know what they have to do.
contemplate
They
suicide?
don't have a value on life. You know? They haven't learned that. You know? So it's easy for them to do that. You know?
And then we don't always know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Go
you off.
ahead.
Don't know what they have dealing with at home, and don't know any resources, okay? Those things in itself, feeling like, you know, we're dealing with at this time where there's a lot of parental abandonment, okay? And that in itself, the you know, abandoned and feeling rejected and unloved, all those things together is enough to push, not just if it can push an adult over to the edge, as we would say, how much greater for a young person who's just feel like that, you know, what am I even here for?
Their purpose. You know? They don't know what their purpose is. They don't find any means of escape from, just kind of say whatever they're going through. A lot of kids, not all, experimenting with drugs, and then when they experiment with these drugs and they get, as they used to say, a bad trip or something, and they can't stop tripping, then they do that. And this new drug, Molly, that they're talking about now, not new, but
you also already say,
new form of it, you know, and more potent, and so kids do all kinds of things. And then I found in my research in this, or even just everyday life looking, those kids who feel that okay, so they have identity crisis, sex, gender crisis, and then those things don't work out the way they thought they was going to work out. Their parents cannot or will not tolerate what's going on, so they don't feel they have anybody else to go to. They're not going to reach out to counselors or things like that, some of them. So they reach out to somebody else, another kid. And then you sometimes have those mass suicides attracted between two people, 2 or 3 people.
So there are a lot of reasons, but it sounds like just from listening to you two ladies, the underlying thing with all of the suicide is that the person they don't see a tomorrow, a better tomorrow, a hope, a future, that things can get better. You know, all you see is what you see, and that's the thing about it. Whether for you talking about children or adult, having a depression increases the risk of suicide. Of the people who complete suicide, 43% have a mood disorder. And when we talk about mood disorders, depression is a mood disorder, bipolar mood disorder. So we're looking at mood disorders like destabilization of the mood. So what do we know about mood disorders? We know we're looking at biologically based illnesses. We're looking at brain illnesses. So which means that even when you look at kids, if you have biological destabilization, mood disorder going on as a child, and we know many of these disorders start when a person is young, on top of all the other stuff that you're saying, you know, on top of the family, on top of the not understanding what's going on in school, the bullying, etc., it just makes it even worse. Yeah, it just kind of makes it even worse. So a person may feel so overwhelmed and helpless about life events that the future appears hopeless, and the person thinks suicide is the only way out. And that's the bottom line, unfortunately. And if you're listening to us or watching us, we want you to know that suicide is a option, but it's not the only option. And it's unfortunately a final option. You know? It's a final option, and you owe it to the options are out there. You know, one step at a time, one day at a time, because things do change.
Yes.
And
And they
find, like you said, find somebody to talk to, because there are people that they think they can talk to, who says no, you're not kill yourself,
right,
and shove it off, you know. And so when you can't find in that person what you're looking for, see if you can find somebody else,
That's
you know?
right.
Because some people don't think people intend to kill themselves, or they'll say, well, if you wanted to be dead, you'd have done it already.
Right, and that's one of the myths that's here.
You know, that kind of thing, and it's not. And it is a desperate call. It is desperate. And the mechanisms that you used to help you get from day to day no longer work. That's what it is. It no longer works. Or if you had a neurosis that, you know, like some people smoke, some people do this, and that's at this end of the scale. And when that no longer works for them, and then they go to the next step, and that no longer works, they run out on the scale. They run out.
That's it.
They run out.
So the thing is, it's so important as what we're talking about this on Suicide Prevention Month, we're talking both to the person who's thinking about suicide, the person who may be thinking about suicide, as well as the person who's trying to help or wants to help, or running across someone who may or may not be suicidal. We're saying to those of you who want to be a help, it's important that you don't get, feel like you're overwhelmed or it's too much. You want to step out there and do whatever you can do, whatever support, positive support that you can give. And if you're a person who is thinking about suicide right now, taking your own life, we want you to encourage you to try again, to try again. Now, let's look at some...
Not try to commit suicide.
Right,
no.
thank you.
Try for more
Try for more help.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, again, these are warning signs. If you see warning signs, I want you to talk to the person. Hey, as you're talking to the person, point out some of the changes that you're seeing so you can begin to start that conversation with the individual. And again, these are just some warning signs. They're not signs that if you see this, automatically it's a person is suicidal. Threatening to hurt or kill himself or herself. It could be a warning sign. Okay? Because just because a person may threaten, after you talk to them, you may determine that they're not really going to do it. So that's why talking to them is so important. But it could be a warning sign. It's definitely a warning sign that something is going on.
That's right.
Right? A person go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just the mere fact that they would even bring up such a subject is a warning. It's not like, how should I say this? If you see a little pin, you think it's nothing to that pin, a little needle stick, which if you stick someone in the right place with a needle, it can be deadly.
Right.
So I'm saying that don't just brush it off.
Take it seriously. Take every threat seriously, especially, because sometimes some children, adults will do this as well. They'll say things to get your response and see how you respond. And they'll adjust depending on your response. I was thinking about killing myself, ha ha ha. And then if you ha ha and laugh it off, then that'll be the end of it. But if you let them know, hey, I'm really concerned, I'm really serious.
It's not a joking matter.
Right, exactly. You can kind of go from there. Looking for ways to kill himself or herself. Seeking access to pills, weapons, or other means could be a warning sign. And again, when you see these warning signs, you want to kind of step out there and point out, hey, I'm noticing that this is what's going on with you, and begin to have a conversation. Talking or writing about death, dying, or suicide. again, Joe, I'm noticing that lately you seem to be, writing more about suicide, about killing yourself, and you said you were going to hurt yourself.
Mhm.
What's going on? And you want to begin to, again, have a conversation. Expressing hopelessness. Just this. A person might say, hey, nothing ever works out for me. Things will never change. It's just hopeless. Okay? Feeling rage or anger or seeking revenge. Acting recklessly or engaging in risky activities seemingly without thinking. And this is a big one. You see this especially among people who use substance abuse and who think about suicide. And I'll ask them, they said, well, I was taking too many pills and I was hoping that I wouldn't wake up. So they may not necessarily say, I'm going to kill myself, but they're hoping that the vehicle, which is the drugs, will do it for them. Okay.
Not making the direct decision. Hoping that decision will be made for them through the pills.
Right. Driving real fast or just doing reckless things. Warning signs of suicide: feeling trapped, like there's no way out. Like I said, I have no other option. I don't see a tomorrow, a better tomorrow, or things changing for me. Increasing alcohol or drug use. And we always say, drug use, alcohol use may make you feel good for the moment. It may take away the thoughts for the moment, but the problem is still there. After you come down off of that high, it's still there. And that's really one of the, I guess, to me, when you think about potential, when I look at the young people, older people too, but when you look at the young people, in certain environments, the drugs, it seems like every time you look around, there's something new or revamped, I should say. And these kids are taking it as a way to escape, and it's just, they just don't know what their future holds for them. So they're taking drugs to escape. Some of these kids are already in school. They're having problems in school. So kids are not doing well in school. They're dropping out of school. They're getting in trouble. They're doing drugs. What kind of future what will they have? So it's really so important that we step in, even as a society or some kind of way. The legal system can't be the only system that's stepping in.
That's right.
The jail system can't be the only one. We all kind of have to work together, I think.
We want to try and get them as many as we can before they get to the jail system.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Truth be told.
Yeah, exactly. Another warning signs of suicide: withdrawing from friends, family, or society. Okay. Experiencing anxiety or agitation, being unable to sleep or sleeping all the time. Undergoing dramatic changes in mood, feeling no reason for living, no sense of purpose in life. Okay, and again, these are just some of the warning signs that a person you may see. And if you're seeing these, you just want to ask, are you having thoughts of suicide? You think about killing yourself. And then you kind of want to go into, like you were saying earlier, how would you do it? And kind of really talking to the person and getting kind of deep into that. Because we know, and we're going to take a look at the prophet Elijah. But it's so important that we step in, we be there for one another. Because think about it, if you saw a person that was bleeding on the streets and their intestines were hanging out, 9 times out of 10, the majority of people wouldn't just walk by.
Right.
I guess some people would, but the majority wouldn't. Somebody would. If I saw that, no, it doesn't matter to me that I'm not a paramedic or I'm not a surgeon. If I saw that, I'm going to run at least to help. Somebody call for help, or I'm going to try to call, cover up. You're going to try to do something. So it's the same thing when a person has a mental illness. When you see a person start having these thoughts, this is a cry that, hey, I need to step in, that this person needs some help. Okay? Yeah, I may not be the right one to help them, but there is someone who can. So we wanted to kind of just take a look at the prophet here in the Bible, because this prophet was a great prophet, a strong prophet, and we're making a parallel between this prophet and you who are listening to us or watching us. You may be a person a strong person. You may be a person taking care of your family. You may be a person going to work every day, and all your life you've done the right things, or you've tried to do the right thing, and you've gotten to a point now where you feel like, I can't go any further. You're to the point where you feel like you can't make it. You feel like, okay, everything I've done so far just hasn't worked out, and I don't think I can go any further. You know, you may be a person who started a church or started a ministry, or it could be your family or whatever it is. You know, you to the point now where it's like, okay, I've given everything I can. I've given all I have to give, and I can't give any more. You know? And if you're that type of person, we want you to say to you before you throw in the towel, before you say, hey, no, I'm not going to go any further, or before you say things out of your mouth, you know, hey, just kill me, just forget it, just shut this ministry down, let's just shut this, I'm going to quit this job, I'm going to walk away from my wife, I'm going to walk away from my family, I'm going to walk away from my kids. Before you say that, what we're encouraging you to do is just kind of be silent for a minute, just to be silent, okay? Sometimes things happen in our lives to force us to go into the wilderness, you know? The prophet had this incident with where that forced him. When Jezebel said, I'm going to kill you. And you may have a situation in your life that's saying to you, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you with bills. I'm going to kill you with a loss of employment. And you feel like, okay, it's all over. And you're now in the wilderness. Sometimes being in the wilderness is the best place to be. Right? Because that's where God can speak to you.
Yes.
And this is where we find him proper. We find him on the run. And we find him now in the wilderness.
That, you know, and God makes no mistakes. It's no accident that if you're listening to us at this time and you're in what you would feel to be a devastated situation, God loves you enough to let you know that somebody cares. It may not be those directly connected to you that you want, but we want to encourage you. You know, right now is not we don't want you to give up. We want you to know that there is resources to be able to get the help that you need, that you can move on from this point of your life to something better. Not saying that your situation necessarily would change, but that your train of thought concerning the situation can be better and help you to see it like the Lord sees it.
And that's so important. The train of thought has to change, because sometimes in order for our train of thought to change, there needs to be a period of rest, a period of something to happen to change our thoughts. And when we look at 1 Kings, looking at chapter 9, starting at verse 4, and I'm just paraphrasing it, that after Elijah ran away, it says he went for a day's journey into the wilderness, and he sat down by himself under a tree, and he said, hey, it's over, Lord. Take away my life, for I'm no better than my father's. He had got discouraged, he had got depressed, he had got depleted. But as he lay under the tree, an angel touched him. 19 years. An angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. And sometimes for us as being helpers, or people who in positions to help another person, sometimes it's not so much what we say. It sometimes is what we do at first. You know, the Lord recognized that he didn't go into Elijah. He didn't pick up here what Elijah said. I know better than my fathers. He didn't go to Elijah. Oh no, Elijah, don't say that. That's not true. You are better than your fathers. You are. He didn't even deal with that. What he dealt with was the root, and he went right to the root. And he sent an angel, and he said, touch him, and said, rise and eat. The man of God didn't say he was hungry. You know, he didn't say anything.
No,
Elijah didn't say, I was hungry, Lord. I need something to eat. No. He just said, this is what's going on. I'm no better than my fathers. Kill me, take me off the scene. And the Lord just said, hey, sent an angel and said, rise and eat. And it's sometimes that we have to do that when we're helping someone, or we're called alongside to be there for someone. Is sometimes you don't want to restate the obvious. You know, you want to kind of focus on what's going on with, okay, I know this person is a strong person. I know this person works. This person right now is having a difficult time. So I'm just going to say, you know what? Why don't you just come on? Let's just sit down and talk for a minute. You know, let's just go ahead and relax for a minute. Let's just go and watch the pay-per-view. The fight is coming on TV. You know, and you're like that. That doesn't have nothing to do with anything. But here he said to him, arise and eat. And then when he told him that, the scripture says he looked, Elijah, and behold, there was a cake baked on the coals and a bottle of water at his head. And he ate and drank and lay down again. So he ate, and then he took a rest. And then the angel of the Lord came to him again and said, arise and eat, for the journey is too great for him. Twice the Lord sent an angel to tell him to eat, and then forsaking your covenant, and I only am left, and they seek to take my life. The Lord still didn't say anything to him as far as correcting him then. He let him go on and on, you know. So he listened. He allowed Elijah to say, Elijah, what's going on? Basically, and I'm paraphrasing. And he allowed Elijah to speak. Sometimes when a person says, I'm suicidal, or they're giving these signs, or they're feeling hopeless or depressed, sometimes you need to give them a minute to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, give them a minute just to listen to what they're saying. And then as you're listening, then you can get into asking the questions and get into, and even as you ask the questions, what is your plan? What are you, how likely is this to be? But as you're talking to the individual, but as he began to go on, Elijah began to calm down in the spirit. He got his strength started to come back. He started to eat. He started to get his rest. And he started to get his strength. And the wilderness will allow us to get our strength.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody who's watching this or listening to us, what you're going through now is not designed for you to die in the wilderness. It's designed for you to get your strength back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's designed for you because it's in the wilderness where you can be quiet. You have nothing else to do
Mm-hmm.
but to be quiet. Because sometimes the Lord may not speak to you the way you want Him to speak to you, right?
That's
But
right.
but as time went on here in 1 Kings chapter 19, we see that the Lord did speak to Elijah, and He did at some point respond when Elijah came back against it. I'm the only one left. He said that twice, and then the Lord said to him, I'm paraphrasing again, you are not the only one left. Basically, you know, look, I have people here who are with you. And I'm talking to whoever's listening to us now.
Mm-hmm.
God is saying, look, you're not the only one left.
Mhm.
It's not over for you to be able to see. And this is what happens sometimes when a person is suicidal or depressed, or when we're just really out to lunch. We don't have the strength to see,
Right.
you know, physically or emotionally, I should say,
Mhm.
to see that things can get better, or to see that this is not the end of it.
Mhm.
You know,
And
just
see
Mhm.
also,
It's okay.
and being with someone, like I
Mhm.
said, that has experienced those things,
Mhm.
or know someone that
Mhm.
experienced those things, it's good, because sometimes you go to talk to somebody and that person may not believe that, like you said, you're serious about it.
Mhm.
And then, as you said, the Lord had other people around.
Mhm.
So I gathered, like with group therapy, for instance, that of a kind
Mhm.
that relates to your
Issue.
issue,
Mhm.
then you can share that story. And
Mhm.
it's not funny that you came up with that, but I was listening to somebody on television last night, Joyce Myers,
Mhm.
and she was talking about, you know, she's constantly talking about her abuse
Mhm.
from her father,
Mhm.
and she was saying about having pity.
Mhm.
We have pity,
Mhm.
and and I said there's power in the word.
Mhm.
So you take that pity and use the power of the
Mhm.
word. However, she said that, and if you think about how enormous this is,
Mhm.
over this period of time that she was molested by her
Mhm.
father,
Mhm.
she said raped by her father, was 200 times,
Mhm.
you know. And if somebody can get beyond that, you
Mhm.
know, and it's hard, you know,
Mhm.
but if somebody can get beyond that, you know that there's somebody they had to carry it for a while.
Right. Right.
You have to be carried for a while. You have to be ministered to
Mhm.
for a while,
That's right.
and then you have to be carried, and then you may be able to see better, as you
Mhm.
said.
Mhm. And that's the thing is what we're called to do, to carry each other, to minister to each other, you know,
Mhm.
and to various degrees. This time it may be your turn to
Mhm.
carry me. Next time I carry you, but
Mhm.
we help us one to another.
That's
You
right.
know, Elijah, the Lord sent angels. For us, the Lord may not send angels per se, but He may say actual real people, like you mentioned, group therapy.
Mhm.
You mentioned people beside you. You know, it could be someone with a word of encouragement, or someone on the bus, or someone at the grocery store, just to
Exactly.
kind of get you
Mhm.
motivated.
Mhm.
Because when you're down, feeling down like this, it's a biological, and I keep saying this because people don't understand how physically depression plays. It's not just, we're looking at the cognitive behavioral therapy, we're looking at thoughts, feelings, and behaviors all going together.
Mhm.
It's not just, I don't feel like it. The person physically, biologically doesn't feel like it. That's why in some cases the medication is so important, because the medications bring it back level, so you can have that edge. You can feel like it again. But when you're really depressed, you're really down, you don't have the strength.
Right. That's right.
You don't have the strength cognitively.
Mhm.
You just don't have the strength physically.
Mhm.
And some people give up on their meds before they work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes 10 to 21 days,
That's right.
you know, before it levels off.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to have a maintenance program, but you have to have a doctor to administer with that. And a lot of times people give up on their meds, and then they get worse.
Right, exactly.
You get worse, and then you're back at, I feel desperate. I feel like I'm being
Just going like in circles.
going around in circles. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's it's hard to say, but keep taking the meds when you do get into
Right.
some kind of program. you
Right.
know.
And then that's so important, right? Because if you're prescribed medication, you have to take it. And some people may say, well, may not need to take it, then that's fine. But there's many people who do, and if you need to
Yes.
take medications, you need to take the medications.
That's right.
But the thing is, you have to, and I say this because people will say about depression, well, just snap out of it. You know, if it was that easy to snap out of it, we would all snap out of it.
Right.
You know, but trust me, it's not that easy. It's painful physically sometimes. You know.
So from the other side of that, you're talking about the person, the consumer himself. You know, we're encouraging them, but for someone that may be dealing with someone in that state, not only do they need compassion and working with them, there has to be some patience and some endurance, you know. Because I might feel like I can snap out of it right away. This other person over here may not. And I can't be judgmental, you know, and think, well, that wouldn't bother me. Well, okay, that might not bother you today, but mark it down.
That's right. You don't know what's
Somewhere
going
along
on.
the line, something later down the line may bother you. And we need to treat one another in situations the way we would want to be treated if it was us in that situation, you know. And I wouldn't want nobody to come at me, you know, why are you letting stuff like that bother you? You know, that don't make no sense. No, okay? So if I don't want to be treated that way, then I need to know how, have some compassion, patience, and endurance, as I said before, in dealing with whoever's in that type. And if you're not the one and you know that you don't have the patience nor the endurance of working with them, at least be willing enough to get them to the place where they can get the help that they need.
Exactly.
And that person also may have had experiences, and it may touch something that they don't want to touch, or they feel that they are inadequate, and so they say those short, snappy things, you know. And I know a few people like that, and they think they're helping you by doing that, and it really is more detriment on top of what you already going
Right,
through.
exactly. You don't
And
want
if
to
you
cause
feel
more
that
damage.
you know that you can't, don't, because you'll do more harm.
Right, it's best to pass them on to someone else. But here, the Word of God gives us a pattern of how to help, because we can look at how God dealt with Elijah. You know, He made sure he had rest. You know, He made sure he had food. He gave him an opportunity to vent. You know, without jumping in and trying to cut him off. Right? He allowed him to talk. You know, He followed up on his plan by continuing to ask him questions. You know, and then after Elijah got his strength back, then he began able to talk to him. And when you look at whether it's mental health first aid or you're helping someone, that's kind of really the pattern sometimes that you want to take. You want to kind of allow the person always meet the basic needs first, you know, right? Depending on the situation, we'll make sure the basic needs, the person is safe, as much as possible, the food, that they're doing okay. And then as you begin to talk to them, you allow them to vent. You don't cut them off. When we talk about effective listening, you don't cut them off. You don't jump in. You don't try to tell them, like you ladies were saying, well, no, you shouldn't feel that way. Oh, no, if I was you. Or, you know, the person is talking about their issues, and then you cut them off and start sidetracking about your